Tara Kiesling here with Together We Will, Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio. I'm here with candidate Henry Frondorf. He's the candidate for Cincinnati City Council. I'm also joined by Cincinnati State Interpreter Lindsay, and later on Betsy will be in the shot. We'll also be joined in this live interview with United We Stand, Invisible for All, and Together We Will, East Cincinnati. To ask a question, click on the video feed and add your question in the comment, and we'll be reading them out loud live to Henry here. We'd ask that no one from any other campaign or staff from any other campaign ask questions. We just appreciate you guys. If you'd like to watch, you can watch, but please don't ask any questions of the candidate. If you'd like to check out past videos, or you don't get a chance to watch all of this video and you'd like to not watch it on Facebook, we have all the videos posted on YouTube. This video eventually will be posted on YouTube in the next week or two. We also have the Facebook page, a public Facebook page where we talk about all these interviews. So feel free to give us a like, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, whatever way we can reach you, we'd love to reach you. So I'm going to get right into introing Henry Frondorf for Cincinnati City Council. If you'd like to know more after this interview, feel free to check out henryfrondorf.com. It's HenryFrondorf.com. You can check him out on Facebook at Friends of Frondorf, or Twitter at Frondorf4Cincy, and that's a number 4, and Cincy with a Y. So Henry is, he has 10 years of experience as a construction estimator. He specializes in estimating the cost of preserving historic structures. He holds a LEED AP certification, which means he has an understanding of green building procedures. And LEED is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. AP is Accredited Professional. So he's LEED AP certified. He's the first vice president of the Westwood Civic Association and the facilitator of the Westwood Coalition. And just so everybody knows, Westwood is the largest neighborhood in Cincinnati. We have a lot of people that live over here. I think you said about 20,000?
30,000.
30,000?
Yep.
So, represent. I live in Westwood. Henry founded and directed the first Cincinnati Neighborhood Games. It's an Olympic-style event. And he won the Community Catalyst of the Year award at the 2017 Neighborhood Summit for his efforts putting together those games. So, if you'd like to intro yourself, if I missed anything,
no, you did a great job.
Give you a couple minutes to intro yourself, and then we can get into questions. Or?
Okay. Well, first of all, and most importantly, I'm a husband and father to 4 little kids. I have a 7-year-old son, a 4-year-old daughter, a 2-year-old daughter, and so that's kind of my life. That's the reason I work hard. The reason I'm getting involved in politics is, so they have a better world when they grow up. A little bit of my day job, if I'm able. I'm the pre-construction manager at Lithgow Restoration Technologies, and I manage the estimating, business development, and marketing of the firm. It's $20 million a year about. We have 150 employees, and I'm on the leadership team of that company, so I get to see what it's like to manage a company and make decisions that affect a lot of people, and it's pretty exciting, pretty interesting job. I go to work every day, pretty pumped to work. So. Also, as far as being on Westwood Civic, I get to see what it's like helping be the voice of the neighborhood, being the voice of residents. Residents come with issues, and we think things through and work on alerting City Hall to the best way to resolve those issues. And as the coalition, the facilitator of Westwood Coalition, a little background about Westwood Coalition, it's like the UN of Westwood. So imagine Westwood is the world, I guess. We have several different community groups, Westwood Civic, Westwood Works, Westwood Historic, and West Kirk, as well as business leaders. And in the past, we might not have been on the same page, but Westwood Coalition was formed to make sure that all of our groups are rowing in the same direction. So each group sends a rep, and we all talk about what each group's doing, how we can help each other, and that's one great group I've been able to be a part of as the rep for Westwood Civic. Also, founding the Cincinnati Neighborhood Games was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life, other than being a dad. In the spring of 2016, we were in 63 locations in 11 weeks, and so I got to every single Cincinnati neighborhood. Fought real hard to make sure that every neighborhood had a captain or representative to lead their neighborhood. We ended up with 46 different captains from 46 different neighborhoods. And the neighborhoods that we were not able to find a captain for, we held joint qualifiers, like Westwood held a qualifier for villages at Roll Hill and English Woods, things like that. So everybody had a chance to be involved. And the neighborhood games was all about bringing pride to neighborhoods, getting people pumped about where they're from. Westwood happened to win. I don't know how that happened. But Mount Lookout, Clifton did great. Madisonville finished in 5th place. North Avondale was 4th place. I think we have someone in this room who was from North Avondale originally. The 4th place finish. I think Winton Hills was 6th place. And there's 29 different neighborhoods actually won a medal. And that's a big deal. It wasn't about the backyard games like water balloon toss and things like that. It was about getting people together and making people proud of where they're from. So that's a not quick maybe, but introduction about what I'm all about.
Sounds like a lot of experience community building and talking to different types of communities and getting everybody to talk to each other and to maybe get along too.
Right.
So I'll just jump into the questions. The first set will be more of an intro into what it means to be a city council person. What are your exact responsibilities to the city and your constituents as a city councilor?
So first off, I do have a platform, but once I'm elected, my job is to represent the entire city. It's not necessarily what exactly my platform is. It's about helping our neighbors get things done that need to be done, make sure they're done properly. So in Westwood Civic, if we have an issue, say someone, they want speed bumps through their street, or not many people know where to start. So they can come to us and we can say, oh, here's what you do, here's the path to follow, and we can help them along that path and kind of be their first rep on as far as civic. And then we go to, if we have any struggles, we'll go to Vice Mayor David Mann or someone on City Council to say, hey, we're struggling with this, we need your help. And a lot of people on council are great and they're very helpful. And that's one of their main jobs, is be your representative, be your voice. There's a lot of great people that work for the city, a lot of very knowledgeable people. So city councils, they need to use that knowledge base that they have as city with city employees that work with them to get things done. Also, setting the budget is another major responsibility a city council has, to make sure that we are funding organizations and duties properly, so that we can grow as a city and not just flounder. If you don't operate your budget properly, we go bankrupt. We can't fund CRC, so we can't make sure there's proper human services, economic development. So budget is a major issue, but I think being a representative, being the voice of the entire city, making sure that everybody's treated with equity, fairness is a huge responsibility as part of being on city council. So I think that's the story.
It sounds like accessibility is a huge part of the job if you're on city council. So how should your constituents, if they need to reach you, what are the ways that they can do? Is there a certain way that you would prefer for them to reach you?
I mean, email's great. I'm on Facebook, Facebook Messenger. You got Twitter, Instagram, all sorts of different ways. I'm responsive to every. Right now, running for council, people ask me questions all the time, and so hopefully, I'm pretty efficient with answering the questions. I like to think about my answer before I just go off and think of the whole picture. I know from my experience being on Civic, from being on a leadership team at Lithgow Restoration, you make a snap decision, it might get done quicker, but it might be the wrong decision. And so I like to think things through, think about both sides. I have friends that are conservative and liberal, and it helps me see both sides of the picture. So on that question, I'll be responsive no matter how you reach out to me. Phone always works too.
So after this last election, the entire country feels like it's in the middle of a political divide where it's us and them, me versus you. So what are your ideas to heal the current political divide?
Well, in City Hall, technically city elections are nonpartisan. You won't see a D or an R or a C next to anybody's name or a G when you go to the polls. I'm a charter endorsed candidate. They're all about nonpartisan government, and they believe in Cincinnati issues, and that's what I'm all about. I went for the charter endorsement only because I'm all about Cincinnati, about good open government, about working as a team. I'd love to work with Republicans as well as Democrats to get things done, because at the end of the day, the story is, a pothole doesn't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, nor do your constituents. They just want the pothole fixed, right? That's the old lingo there. So I'm a middle of the road kind of guy, and I just want to get things done and make sure it's fair and equitable to all parties involved. But it's not about necessarily national politics when you're in City Hall. It's about what's best for Cincinnati.
How can your constituents hold you accountable?
Well, in 4 years they can not vote for me. I guess that's one way. Nowadays with social media and there's plenty of ways to reach out to me and make sure that I'm doing the right thing and doing what is best for the city. And I plan on using that charter initiative of being good and open government transparency. So I plan to use Facebook quite a bit and say, hey, these are the main decisions coming up in the council today. This is what I intend to vote for or against, and this is why. Just because I might not agree with you doesn't mean that I can't be your friend or I can't relate to what you're discussing. So I think the transparency is huge to make sure that people understand why I voted that way or I didn't.
So you've kind of touched on this question a little bit, but maybe more pointedly, how will you work within the council and local government to move the city forward?
It's all about the teamwork. Right now I'm running for the first time for city council, and it is kind of a single player game almost. You're running against 40, whatever it's going to be, 40 people. But once you're elected, it should be 9 people on a team, on the same team to move Cincinnati in the right direction. I want to be able to provide, I want to be able to provide a teamwork initiative to make sure that we're not fighting with each other, that we're working in the right direction, but we also need to value other people's opinions. If everybody's on the same opinion, everybody's on the same idea trail, a lot of times you make mistakes. It's good when you have people on your leadership team that disagree with you, because then it makes you think about your decision. And that's all important to make sure Cincinnati moves forward in the correct direction. So I think just reaching across the aisle is the way I plan on doing it.
Sounds like thoughtful decisions. That's what you're
Right.
about.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Cincinnati sanctuary status, and will you keep Cincinnati a sanctuary city?
So I've been to several community councils speaking, and I've heard several council members and mayoral candidates discuss this issue because they're often questioned about it. And a lot of times, they bring up the fact that we're not breaking any federal laws. And so some people will say, well, that's not really a sanctuary city. And I know the initiatives that started the process I think happened in 2015, where basically the police said, we're not going to pull anybody over based on their immigration status. And that was done under a different administration. When it comes down to it, it's all about fairness with people. Our immigration laws, I believe, are shot. They're not very good. I had a friend who was a concrete superintendent. He was in this country for 20 years, had 3 kids, great guy, but he was here in this country illegally, and they deported him. And so that's got to be fixed. I mean, he's a hard-working guy, a family man, not breaking any laws. And I guess some could say other than the law that he broke when he entered the country. But we need to resolve that issue. So as far as Sanctuary City, I'm all about openness, equality, making sure that all of our residents feel welcome here. I know the City of Cincinnati has a identification card for undocumented immigrants. I think that's great. We're all on the same team here, no matter what country you're from. We're all trying to support our families, and that's what needs to be thought out. And that's really a federal issue, not something I can really impact as a city council member.
So this question was a question that we've had on the list since we started doing this back in March, but now it feels particularly important. What is your plan for taking on racial healing in this community, and how does it differ from what has been done in the past?
Right. So I think my experience with the Cincinnati Neighborhood Games was huge. I was able to get out to all neighborhoods, saw an awesome diversity of all types of people. And when people get together, they realize how similar they are. It's awesome seeing all these kids play with ball and derby or cornhole or water balloon toss, and they're all having fun. They're all giggling. They're having a great time. And it is irrelevant what color their skin is. And if we can somehow figure out a way to keep that, right, to keep that that not having that racial bias, when they grow up, I think that's people together, engaging people as an entire city is part of that. It's not about your skin color; it's about who you are, right? And when people get together, they see that. They're like, oh, we can be friends here. And once you have a few friends, it gets past the point. It's irrelevant, and it needs to get to that point. And it's obviously not there yet. We have a lot of work to do, but I believe engaging our community is the best way.
Yes, because we're all one community and we're all neighbors.
Right. That's the bottom line.
How will you ensure that public schools are providing comparable and competitive education, regardless of race or economic status of their students?
So, Cincinnati, we have the Cincinnati School Board, which, like Mike Morosky, right? They manage the schools. So the City Council technically doesn't have any direct authority over schools. It doesn't mean we can't work together. It doesn't mean we can't make sure that our grounds are properly taken care of, and that schools are, that if they need our help, they're properly funded. But the funding is by the Cincinnati Public School Board, not by the City of Cincinnati City Council, I guess. We pay our property taxes. So I don't know what authority I'll have being on City Council, not very much, but I'm definitely willing to work with the Cincinnati School Board to get things done. I think several times House on unconstitutional. So until that's resolved, we have a lot of work to do there. But that's a state rep issue as well as a school board issue.
What is the city's responsibility related to public health?
We need to track our public health, make sure that all of our residents are on the right path, and if they're not, we need to make sure that we're providing the proper social services to make sure that our residents are properly taken care of. For those that can't afford, I think we only have one community health center in Madisonville. I think it's the only one. But things like that are important, where people can just go down the street to get proper health care. Health care is extremely expensive, and we need to make sure that if you can't afford it, you should still get health care, I believe. It's kind of it should be a right if we need to help people stay on the right track. So the City Council can provide funding when necessary to the right departments or right organizations. And I don't have to be an expert in healthcare or human services. I can depend on my city employees as well as experts around town to make sure that we're funding the right organizations and that the money is spent appropriately and properly, and that it's tracked. We know what outcomes they want if we give them $1 million. Like, what is your goal? What is the outcome that you see? And make sure that that money is tracked and that is actually the outcome is happening. And if it's not, how can we help you?
Yeah, the follow-up to funding is really important.
It is.
So what will you do to combat the heroin epidemic?
So we have heroin problem all over the city. Westwood for sure has the problem too as well. I believe right now when you're pulled over, if you're in a car, for example, and you overdose and you get Narcan, which I believe Narcan is a great thing, we need to give people the chance. I think you should get sent to you shouldn't get sent to jail, but I think you should get sent to rehab to make sure that we're giving you help. A lot of times they just release the people and then it's back to doing what they're doing. So I think rehab is very important. Very important. 2 doors down from my house, we have it's Hope Over Heroin. It's I think 20, 30 guys that are rehabbing. Awesome guys, and they're just trying to get their life back together. And I can't imagine how hard it is to overcome that. But they're having a decent rate of men who come out of there back on track. And so that's extremely important, and it needs to happen throughout the entire city. We need to work as a community to overcome this. I know several people with family members who have died from heroin overdoses, and it's terrible. And people say, you shouldn't use Narcan, but yeah, you should. I mean, people make mistakes, and we need to help them. Who's to say that someone uses heroin can't come back and cure cancer or something like that? So it's all about, I believe in second chances. I believe in helping people, but as a city, we need to send those people to rehab, and I think as a city we should be paying to help rehab those people if there's not proper health care already in place.
And if you're someone that doesn't believe in Narcan, I think you should get outside of your bubble and talk to someone who's been affected by heroin.
Right. You probably know somebody.
You probably do.
You probably know somebody.
Probably do.
So.
That's my personal little PSA in there. What do you propose city government do to decrease the spread of HIV and syphilis?
I think it's kind of like the healthcare question. Make sure we're on top of it. Make sure we know we can use data for where the hotspot areas are, and if there's different centers or things like that we can open up to help combat that or provide funding to the right organizations that do combat that. I think that's where we start. And so.
Yeah, some of these, when they're in the same thread, I feel like some of the answers you're kind of touching on, but just so pointedly people know where you're coming from with each of these issues. How will you support diversity training for law enforcement officers and first responders in dealing with mental illness and unconscious bias? All
right, so a chunk of the city budget goes to fund police and fire. And so as a city council member, I have the responsibility to make sure that funding is used properly and making sure that funding is used for things like proper training. So when we encounter someone with mental illness, we understand how to act on the situation, get the experts involved. And so that's my intention, is to make sure that we have the right policies in place to make sure that we're dealing with all of our citizens, no matter who they are, in the respectful manner that we can.
This question kind of connects with that one and recent events as well. What programs would you propose or implement to reduce the number of incidents of gun violence in the city?
All right, so Westwood Civic District 3 and the Community Police Partnering Center in 2015 started Westwood Uniting to Stop the Violence, and it has done an amazing job. And it's all about community-backed policing. It started with the PIVOT model, which is place-based investigations of violent offender territories. It's all about using data, and it's all about getting the community involved, right? Because if you don't have the community support to police, you're not going to get anything done. And so I think at the corner of Harrison and Baltimore McHenry, the gun violence score went from something ridiculous like 170 down to 16 from the fall of 2015 to today. And then Harrison and McHenry went from 126 to 52. And that was from the summer last year, right, to today. And how that happened was we got together with the police, and the community partnering center helped us. We got in a gymnasium a couple times with as many people from Westwood and East Westwood who could come. We sat down, and the police said, here's our data, here's our hotspots, where do you think your hotspots are? And let's work as a team, and let's work as a unit to resolve these issues. And so we did some simple things like holding a hot chocolate show at Ryan Park, and we did some more complicated things like closing down U.S. Market with obviously it was really the police, but it was the community saying there's an issue here, we know there's an issue, and let's take care of it. And now U.S. Market is the Jubilee Market, which will sell fresh produce and clothing to the neighborhood, and they have a barbecue stand out there and things like that. And so that's helped reduce gun violence in that area. It's helped in East Westwood as well. It's not just about what you would think. There's also about increased lighting and getting people together and having proper parks and communicating, know where the lines of communications are, block watches, citizens on patrol. It's actually a ton of different stuff that comes together. And we've had a ton of success. I believe Westwood Uniting to Stop the Violence is up for a Westwood Uniting to Stop the Violence because of the work of Captain Jones and our past leaders like Mayor Jenkins from Westwood Civic and Rodney Christian from East Westwood who got this thing started, and the community got behind it. And that's what did it. And I want to take that example to other neighborhoods because Westwood's not alone with crime. We are the largest neighborhood, but there are lots of neighborhoods that have issues with crime. And I think we take that community-backed police initiative to other neighborhoods. I think we're going to have a huge impact. That requires. But there's some things we need to spend money on to make sure we're all safer. The role of government is to make sure you're safe, and that is will be one of my priorities when on city council to work with those groups again. To maybe have the Avondale United to Stop the Violence or East Price Hill United to Stop the Violence. So that's my goal. And if the community is not behind it, you're not going to get anything done. So it needs to be an effort of the people who live in those neighborhoods to say, hey, we don't want violence. No one does. It's a common sense thing. It crosses all parties.
know how you can hear something like that and be really proud of our city or our neighborhood?
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people involved, and it's pretty sweet that it happened. We still have problems, right? You still have random gun violence, which is terrible. But as a whole, it's gotten a lot better, and it's gotten a lot better because.
Do you recognize any unjust shootings in Cincinnati in recent years? If so, which ones?
Well, I'm pretty anti-violence, so I think every single shooting is unjust. No one, I believe, deserves to get shot. There's other ways to resolve problems. So every shooting could have a different outcome. I guess that's my answer to that.
What will you do to support women's health care in Southwest Ohio, and how will you support Planned Parenthood?
So, like the other health care issues, making sure that all our people, including definitely women, have the right health care possible. When I was in college and we were broke, my wife used Planned Parenthood because it charged you based on your income, and it was very helpful. We couldn't afford to go to a doctor or actual practice or a hospital, and so we used Planned Parenthood for those needs. It's some people might give it a bad rap, but it's all about making sure that women have the proper health care, and so I appreciate the work they do.
Do you support legislation guaranteeing members of the LGBTQ community the ability to adopt, and would you oppose legislation limiting this right?
All right, so my brother, who lives in Cleveland with his husband, they got married last October, and so when they're giving their vows, you realize love is love is love pretty quickly. I mean, it's all of a sudden when it's close to home and when it's your family, you realize it doesn't matter, and it's all about love, and so. I've been bugging them to adopt, so I'm all about everybody having the equal right to raise a child. I mean, and we have so many a need for foster care and adoption, so we'd be kind of stupid not to be on board with that. I mean, there's great parents, no matter what gender you are, no matter what what you believe in. It's kind of irrelevant. It's about being a good parent, and you can be a good parent either way. So
yes, and if you truly believe in life, then you believe in once someone's born, taking care of them.
Of course.
My opinion. Do you support legislation guaranteeing transgender individuals the ability to use the public restrooms in which they feel safest? Would you oppose legislation limiting this right?
I would oppose legislation limiting that right. I mean, if you consider whatever sex you consider yourself, okay, I don't think we should be saying you can't go in this bathroom. I think it's kind of to me it's a silly issue. It's not a silly issue to transgender people, of course, because they're dealing with it. But the people who oppose it, it's kind of like, well, what's your deal? I mean, who cares? Why are we fighting over bathrooms? You should go into the restroom you believe is your restroom. So
the one that makes you comfortable.
The one that makes you comfortable.
So if you're just running for Cincinnati City Council, if you'd like to ask a question, feel free to click on the video and add your question in the comment, and I will read them live here. Where are we? What public safety policies and initiatives do you support, and how will you allocate funding to support these plans?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Westfield United and Stop the Violence in that one, because that is a public safety initiative, and you heard all about it a couple minutes ago, and I want to support that through the city. So that's my main public safety policy.
We do have a question from the audience here. What party are you, if any?
I was endorsed by the Charter Party, the Charter Committee of Greater Cincinnati. So it was founded in the 1920s. It's all about Cincinnati. It's all about open and good government, regionalism, while focusing on our neighborhoods as well. So transparency is huge, and that's what the Charter Party is all about, and I'm all about the Charter Party.
How will you improve accessibility in Cincinnati? So issues include more accessible buses, accessibility of jails and City Hall, interpreters and captions for live events, issues like that.
I'd make sure that our codes are written, building codes are written properly. It's amazing that you don't realize how hard it is to get around in a wheelchair until you meet somebody that's in a wheelchair. and you hold an event and you realize really quickly, like, oh, they can't even come because there's no way into this building. And there's a ton of buildings all around the city that are not accessible at all. And, and that's about kind of buildings getting grandfathered in, but I think we need to look at that again and consider, all of our residents. Even if it's a small population, it's still, we should be allowing, no matter who it is, to access your business. I know it's a private business, but we need to make sure our building codes are written properly that says, you better have wheelchair access. I mean, it stinks when you're invited to go to a party or you're invited somewhere and you can't even go because you can't get in. So that needs to be dealt with.
Seems like just a better business practice too. To if someone wants to get into your business, why have any barrier to somebody that wants to support you?
Like Councilman Kevin Flynn. I mean, he's amazing getting around like that. And if he can't get in the buildings, I'm sure he's had to deal with a lot in City Hall, and so we need to look at that.
So now we're going to move more into the environmental type questions. What is the current condition of Cincinnati's water treatment plants? And there are several that are connected to this. Are they overloaded? How does this affect the water in the Mill Creek and the Ohio River? And if you need me to repeat those at any point.
That's fine. I believe that our treatment plants are at capacity. I don't know if they're necessarily over capacity, though when we have several 100-year floods, that kind of puts a damper on them. But you talk about MSD or?
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's what people are asking about.
Oh, okay. All right. So in 2018 here, the 50-year agreement comes to an end. And right now, for those who don't know, MSD is Metropolitan Sewer District, and it is managed and operated by the City of Cincinnati. But Hamilton County sets the rate schedule, and they set the budget. So Hamilton County says, here you go, Cincinnati, here's what you got to work with. Go for it. Originally, it might have been a good idea. There are 49 municipalities, separate entities in Hamilton County, I believe 43 of which are MSD accesses. So we have a lot of different parties that are working with MSD right now. And I might be too late for this, but I believe there should be one entity that manages MSD. And it could be an appointed board, percentage-wise from city or the county, however we work it out, but it needs to be, one entity that sets the rates, sets the budget, manages and operates MSD. We're right now in a part of a $1 billion restoration, which is part of that question, I believe, to eliminate our create separated sewers, right? Because a lot of times now, you flush something down a toilet, it might not be a non-separated sewer, so it goes right to the treatment plant. But if we could have, the stormwater, go right into the river, or your sewage go into the treatment plant, that'd be a better process. So that would alleviate your basement backing up when it floods or there's a lot of rain. Ours did a few months ago. It kind of stinks, literally.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to work on. They are working on it now. I think it's $1 billion, I believe. Things like Lick Run in South Fairmount, which will be a giant park. They tore down a ton of buildings to make this happen, so it better work out. But they are working on it now. But in 2018, we have the chance to fix our arguments, and we should do it thoughtfully and do it the right way. And technically, it should already be figured out. We're only a year away, and I don't think it's figured out.
Yeah, less than a year, all right?
Yeah.
What programs or initiatives would you support to make Cincinnati more environmentally responsible?
So right now we have the Solarized Cincy program, which is, I think, is a couple grand, I believe, off your solar installment, which is great. We looked into it on our house. I think 4 kilowatt system. It was a 9-year payback, and the money, when they give you those incentives, it works out. Along with the federal rebate, the money starts making sense. Now, at this point, if you don't have those initiatives or those incentives, you're probably not going to spend the money to put solar on your roof to have a 15-year payback when you're probably not going to be living here anymore, and the panels might not work anymore. So those initiatives are important until we get to a point where it's affordable to put solar on your roof. I believe City Hall just enacted that policy where they want waterworks to be completely run on renewable energy instead of the coal power plants we have now. And then I think by 2035, hopefully the whole city will be run on renewable energy. So those are great policies. As a lead AP, I understand what impacts construction can have on green. You tear down a building, it's going to take a lot of work to make whatever you build greener than what was already there, because you just create all that waste. You have to build all that new construction, when you could have just fixed the building that you already had in front of you. So my wife and I renovated our house. We bought an older house, gutted it, and we're using what we already have, what our forefathers built us. And so there's so many different ways you can go green. Building is a big one, but renewable energy is also huge. If you don't have insulation in your house, that's a big deal. So everybody can kind of help. Lights, every single person in the city can go from using the old school, which I don't think they still even make those, but LEDs. My company works on a lot of parking garages. We still let our parking garages going to LED. That saves a ton of energy, for the whole city. My roof actually is black, which is not, I guess, the best, because it creates kind of a lot of heat. We are in an environment, well, it's kind of 50-50 because it's cold in the winter, and it kind of makes up for it. But there's different things we can think about.
So can local electricity be sourced from wind, solar, water instead of coal and natural gas?
Yes. I think one of our policies is we buy credits. I think the city buys credits for renewable energy to kind of offset that. But at this point, a lot of our power really comes from coal. Comes from, we do have Markland Dam, which is a hydro dam, but I don't think we get too much from that. So we are in a spot. Ohio's a great spot for solar energy, and we should invest in it. Just look at the Cincinnati Zoo. If you think it can't work, look at the Cincinnati Zoo. I think taxpayer dollars only go to pay the animals, feed the animals, right? Everything else, they're self-funded, and they're doing it on green energy. They got that huge parking lot, all the solar panels. All the water runoff goes in the big tanks, and every project they do is LEED Platinum or beyond. And they're building smartly, and they're using renewable energy smartly. So we can use the Cincinnati Zoo kind of as a replica for the whole city.
Yeah, they make a lot of smart choices there.
They do.
We have several questions from the audience coming in right now. Do you have any thoughts on addressing poverty, particularly child poverty in Cincinnati?
So that's a very hard question, which is a very important question. I know right now we have groups like Upspring, which helps homeless children get out and see the world a little bit, teaches them things, and so we can fund organizations that already help with childhood poverty, which is something we should do, as long as we track the funding like we talked about. I know there's school luncheons right now, or I think every public school has lunch during the summer, which some people scoff at, but when you're a hungry kid, you don't control who your parents are. So things like that are great. I want to make sure that that's funded properly, which is, I believe, a CPS and federal initiative or state initiative. So making sure that our food banks are properly stocked. I could go into adult education here, but might be a little stretch. Well, maybe not really. I mean, there's two programs in lower price though: Community Matters and Education Matters. And Education Matters, they help parents get their GEDs. And as a working parent, I understand how hard that would be to continue supporting your family while going back to school to better yourself. But if you can break that cycle of people thinking that education doesn't matter, I think we'll eliminate a lot of childhood poverty. Because if my parents said, "You're going to read that book, you're going to study hard," right? I had that. If you don't have that, I would think it's almost impossible to get yourself out of that hole. Because if you don't have someone saying reading's important or studying's important, education matters, then it's hard for you to realize that. So if we get adults, younger parents, to realize how important it is, because they see it, right? They get that GED, they're able to get a better job. All of a sudden, they're getting better paychecks because they deserve it, and they will tell their children, education matters because it mattered to me. And that'll help reduce childhood poverty, as well as job training. I'm a construction guy, we can't hire enough bricklayers. They pay well, very well. And it's getting people in our city helping fund those programs like the Urban League and Allied Construction Industries have a pre-apprenticeship program. And I was at their graduation, and they said that they're only able to fund one class a semester. And it's, I think, 12 to 13 people graduated, but there were 10 construction companies there to hire them that day. I mean, these things work. And all of a sudden, all these people are getting paid better because they have some basic skills. And, pre-apprenticeship programs all about getting people excited to work, understand how to show up on time. But once you get a job, you can train yourself. You can get training from your coworkers, and if you're an apprenticeship program, things like that. And so that'll all help with childhood poverty. That is probably the real answer to solve the problem is better education, better job training, getting our people excited to work. So it might be a long answer, but it's obviously an issue that no one's been able to resolve for all time. So I would start with the adult education and ensuring that we still have those social services in place to help these kids, because they don't control who their parents are.
So this is a longer question.
Okay.
What do you think about the criminal prosecution, including jail and house arrest, of lower-income homeowners for not being able to afford to make home and property repairs in Cincinnati? And would you work to change this practice?
Right, so an interesting thing about the Neighborhood Enhancement Program, which Westwood and East Westwood had recently. And part of that program is the city doesn't necessarily spend any direct money, but they do invest their manpower. And so they sent all their building inspectors out to a small portion of Westwood and East Westwood, and they inspect the homes. And then they write citations for issues. Your gutter's not working, your sidewalk's broken up, you need to fix these, right? A chunk of the homeowners live in Idaho or New York or whatever, or like that, and they're just renting these spaces out. And they should be held accountable, of course. People who live in those houses and own those houses and they can't afford to fix those up, we have programs like People Working Cooperatively who do a good job of getting out. And the community needs to get behind and help. I mean, owning a home is tough, and people fall on tough times. I do believe in definitely personal responsibility, but you do need a helping hand. I mean, if my gutter's falling down, it would not benefit me it would benefit my home to fix it, obviously, in the neighborhood, but it's tough. So there are programs out there that can help people. We need to be respectful and work with people, not just shout at them to fix their issue. It's kind of like, hey, how can we help you as a neighborhood to resolve these issues so they get done? Because a lot of times what happens is nothing ever happens. It's just the gutter's never fixed. The owners who live in a different state or different city never fix their issues. And it's kind of like the people who own the homes are the ones held more accountable because they're there. And so the city can find them a little easier. So it's a tough question, but we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to help people who necessarily can't afford it.
Yeah, and sending someone to jail who can't afford to fix up their home seems like the opposite of fixing the problem to me.
Right.
You can't afford to fix your home.
There's different,
there
could be payback methods, a better loan system.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people should get everything for free, but we need to work with those people. Like the retaining wall issue, right? I mean, fixing a retaining wall ain't is the issue. It's expensive. Maybe there's a proper loan in place that could help.
How will you help alleviate poverty in Cincinnati by improving the bus system and public transportation?
All right, so the number is 75,000 jobs that are unreachable by Metro. And I think Metro is the answer to get people to work to where they need to go, because the bus system is the cheapest option per mile to move people around. I'm all about light rail. I think it'd be awesome if I could go to Cleveland in 2 hours, or even if I could go downtown on a streetcar, that'd be great. But streetcar's $40 million a mile, light rail's like $100 million a mile, and so unless we get major federal grants to make that happen, that's probably not going to happen in the near future. Obviously, I'll fight for those grants, but the bus system is the best way to go. We can move people efficiently, and I know in 2018 there will be a ballot issue, and I think as long as we are ensuring that SORTA is managed properly and the money is spent properly, I think we should pass that initiative, because it's hard not owning a car. I lived in England for a year as part of my study abroad, and you could get anywhere in the whole country without owning a car. It was no big deal. It was like, this is how it is. You can move around, and if people are happier. It's just a better system. So we need to make sure that people can get to where they need to get to. They need to get to work. We need to be able to fund that and make sure that we're helping those people, because really you're getting paid back. I mean, if we allow someone to get to a job, and it needs to be a regional thing, but they're paying a revenue tax, right? The company's paying a tax as well. I mean, it pays back. It pays itself back. It shouldn't be a Republican or Democrat issue. I mean, you look at the studies, and they all seem to pay themselves off pretty quickly. And so that's something that's well worth funding, because in the end, your city will be a better place to live. So.
What are your thoughts on the tensing trial, and is there anything the city can do to reduce incidents of officer-involved shootings?
So the San Bo's tensing issue was a terrible incident. And as a city council member, I don't have any influence over the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office, and definitely not the jury that's there. Our system is you're tried by your peers. And so unless we change our whole judicial system, there's no impact that I personally can have on City Hall. I will definitely, when that happened, rightfully so, since I worked with the UC Police Department to better their program, I can work with Cincinnati Police to make sure that they have the right training programs in place so things like that don't happen.
Do you have any plans to address food deserts in Cincinnati, and what can City Council do?
Good question.
About those?
Food deserts are definitely a big issue. I know there's a big food desert in Avondale. Without Save-A-Lot in Westwood, there'd be a food desert there. Being able to walk to your neighborhood grocery store would be great. And we can provide incentives for grocery stores to move in different neighborhoods. There's tax abatements. There's tax increment financing, which will help them build public infrastructure around their grocery store. So there's ways we can encourage grocery store chains to move into different neighborhoods because we have those tools in our tool belt that we can use to encourage that. So I believe it's a major issue, and I believe we can do a better job of resolving that issue. So it's more of a here's a carrot, take the carrot. So.
Well, speaking of tax abatements, what do you think about gentrification? Is there anything council can do better to balance developing the area and maintaining affordable housing options for residents?
So one thing council can do, I think, better is 49 of our neighborhoods have a neighborhood council. OTR has a neighborhood council, and a recent development that got passed through was fought pretty hard by the OTR Community Council because it didn't have any. I think one thing was it didn't have any low-income housing, and so we should listen to our neighborhood councils. They are local government, as local as it gets. They're not government technically. It's the voice of the people, though, and if the people want low-income housing in their neighborhood, then that should be definitely looked at. And when the city gives abatements, basically gives money to developers, all of a sudden we have control. We can say, a portion of your property should be low-income housing, and if they say no, then we just, maybe that is off the table now. I believe we got to be careful with that, because without economic development, we can't afford social services, right? So it is a sticky situation, but we do have some authority to make sure that we're doing this smartly. If you grew up in a neighborhood and you're forced out because of high dollar rent, that's a shame, and it should be, and it can be technically addressed. I know everybody's out to make a buck, but we're a better community when we're more diverse, more engaged with each other. And if we weren't giving money to these entities or these developers, we wouldn't have much of a say. But since we are, we have something on the table we can offer.
There's a follow-up question to this as well. How do we get ahead of gentrification in other low-income neighborhoods?
So I think there's 20-something, this might be over or around, but there's 20-something TIF districts, which is tax increment financing. And I think we can use those funds to fund neighborhood development the way we want it to be funded. I'm not too sure what happens to all the TIF money in those districts. I know Westwood has two, and I don't think I've ever seen any TIF money. But we can get ahead of gentrification just by making sure that every neighborhood has a not equal but close to equal percentage of low-income housing. The West Side has a ton of low-income housing because the market, it was cheap for a long time, and so people are able to build and put low-income housing in there because they can afford to do so. So I think we need to be very considerate of all of our people when we make decisions in City Hall.
This is an interesting question, but I'm not sure I totally understand it. Do we have your support on helping the water tower restoration in Mount Airy?
Yes, I will help you with the restoration of Mount Airy. It's an iconic structure. We got to make sure we fund it properly. I believe it's owned by Cincinnati Waterworks, which is owned by the city. But that's a structure that if we tear down, I don't think it's on the table to tear down. We would lose something. Very kind of it's an iconic structure. So yes, at this point, you have my support to make sure that we go through the proper procedures to make sure that everything's kosher with that structure.
Okay. What are your top policy priorities on council?
So let's start with neighborhoods. I'm a big neighborhood guy, neighborhood games. I'm very involved with Westwood, and I understand that a lot of neighborhoods don't have the organization structure to come up with one voice down the City Hall. There's a lot of neighborhoods that don't even have a neighborhood improvement plan. Westwood has one from 2010. I know Hyde Park hasn't had one for neighborhood issue. It's everywhere neighborhood issue, and I know city planning is working with neighborhoods like Hyde Park right now, and East Price Hill with Warsaw Alive to help with improvement plans. Improvement plans are important. A lot of neighborhood councils are maybe treading water because they're volunteers, right? We're all trying to make our city better, our neighborhood better on our own time. And it helps when city gets behind you and says, how can we help meet your vision? We're not telling you what to do, but what is your vision? And let's work on that vision. So neighborhood improvement plans kind of, throw things out 5 years. Like, what is your vision for your neighborhood in 5 years? Where do you want development, new buildings? Where do you want low-income housing? Where do you want grocery stores? What is great about your neighborhood and what needs work? And when everybody gets in the same room and talks about that, things happen. And we got to be careful that neighborhood improvement plans don't, become a book on the shelf and collect dust. Right? We got to make sure that those policies are followed through. And also, using the example of Westwood Coalition, which is getting all the groups in each neighborhood, because neighborhoods, it's not just neighborhood council. There's community urban redevelopment corporations. There's groups like Westwood Works, a lot of historic groups, business groups, and they all need to be on the same team. And right now they're not. There's a lot of groups that think they're the council or think that they're the business development partner, and we need to make sure that everybody knows what they're good at doing, and we need to get everybody together on the same team so they can all row in the same direction. So that's one of my main priorities. Expanding Westwood United to stop the violence to other neighborhoods. Second one, and job training and adult education is my third. As well as we have that connects, Cuff, West End, up in the Fairmounts, Westwood, and beyond, Bridgetown and Green Township. It's a county issue. It's a county bridge, and we need to work with the county and the state and the federal government to get that fixed. Because right now it's not scheduled to even begin really 2025, and not scheduled to complete until 2028. And that is, 11 years from now. I'll be extremely old by then, and it just needs to be fixed before then. So I will do everything in my power to work with the county and the state and the federal groups to make sure that happens. Last night at West Pacific Association, I presented a motion to make sure that we urge our local representatives to take this seriously. This is an issue. The concrete district, the county gets sued. How much does that cost? Because everybody's governments are totally self-insured. So it's kind of like we need to act on this. We knew this was going to be an issue for 40 years. So Western Hills Viaduct is definitely as far as an infrastructure project, one of the tops on my list.
So we only have a couple minutes left of this interview. If you'd like to ask Henry a question, click on the feed and add your question in the comment section. So we have another question from the audience here. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Metro being an important part of the transportation picture. What do you think about the streetcar? Should it be extended, and under what conditions? Okay, so my wife and my 4 kids, we go downtown all the time. We'll park around Liberty, and we'll jump on the streetcar at Family Market, and we'll ride down to Smale, because it's awesome, Washington Park because it's cool,
and then back to Friendly Market. And if the streetcar wasn't there, we would go to one place, because getting 4 kids out of a car more than one time is a nightmare. And so jumping on a streetcar is fun. It's pretty neat. It does move you around. It's 3.6 miles, something like that. And so it gets you around town. People say they can walk faster than a streetcar, and they're lying to you, because it does move you around. As far as extending it, we have priorities like Western Hills Viaduct, for example. But if we got the right grants, like I said, I'd love to jump on the streetcar at Westwood Town Hall and ride downtown. That'd be sweet. There used to be the Westwood Cincinnati Railroad. That's gone. So I'm not opposed to expanding the streetcar. I am opposed to doing it irresponsibly. We need to make sure that the funding is in place to do so, and we need to make sure that it's more regionalized, right? People complain about the cost, but then they also complain that it doesn't go anywhere. And so it's like, hey, people, like, if you wanted to go somewhere, it costs money. It's, like I said, about $40 million a mile. Yeah. And if we can get it different places, it'll be definitely worth it. But at this point, we need to focus on Metro, and we need to focus on finding that funding to expand that. But projects like the viaduct are kind of higher up on my list.
So we are here with Henry Frondorf. He's a in learning more, feel free to visit him at henryfrondorf.com, and his last name is spelled Frondorf. His Facebook is Friends of Frondorf, and you can find him on Twitter at Frondorf for Cincy with a Y.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, yes, you can actually, if you'd like to conclude with any closing statements, go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So we're doing something pretty cool on Saturday. We're going to visit every single neighborhood in one day. And so I've Googled it, looked it up, and I don't think it's ever been done. So we, well, for probably the right reasons, it's going to take us about 14 hours. And like I said, last year I was in every single neighborhood. I got to really experience every neighborhood. And so this is not what this is necessarily about. This is about more of a fun adventure, kind of to get a different perspective of our city, because you can see everything over time, right? And it's different than seeing it all at once. And so, we're starting in Cellar Park at 6:30 in the morning, and we're going to have lunch in California. And then we're going to go all around, and we'll head back, and we'll finish in Westwood at 8:15 p.m. So we put the list of neighborhoods and locations on our Facebook page, and I believe it's on our website too. And so you can go there and check it out. And if you're around and about in Cellar Park, I believe it's at the Busy Bee Bakery at 6:30 in the morning. Come say hi. We'll be at things like the Anderson Ferry just after that. So it's pretty tightly scheduled. Every minute for 52 neighborhoods is obviously almost an hour. So if we're not on time, it'll be blatantly obvious very quickly. So we have a couple 20-minute, 60-minute breaks to try to even us back up. But if you go to a place, be there on time, because we can only be there 10 minutes, because 10 times 52 is almost 9 hours. So it's boom, boom, boom. So we're calling it the Frondorf Neighborhood Dash, 52 Neighborhood Dash. So I hope you can join me and my crew out there, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be kind of a neat experience to see a glimpse of everything in one day.
That'd be cool if you could GoPro and time lapse the entire day.
That'd be pretty wild. Yeah.
So I'd like to again thank our interpreters from Cincinnati State. We have Betsy here and Lindsay off to the side. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions for Henry, feel free to comment on the thread, and we can tag Henry in the comment and make sure that he sees them. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.